You're under arrest, Reno.
You talking to me, Marshal?
Your name's Reno, isn't it?
All right, Marshal, what do you say I done?
You don't remember me, do you?
No.
When you hang a man, you better look at him. Don't go for that gun, Reno. I need you alive.
This is Dueling Pistols, where history draws first and legends never die. No fluff, no filters, just raw stories of grit, blood, and legacy. Triggered by Black Flag.
You know who else are Freemasons? Henry Seymour and William Heston.
Which are who?
Oh, Brian, you know them. The guys who made Quaker Oats.
Were they?
Yeah, they were both Freemasons. Do you know why? Do you know why they named it Quaker Oats? Because neither of them were actually Quakers.
No.
Brian, is just because it was a symbol of good quality and honest value.
So they were named Quaker Oats just because
the Quakers were
they
dope.
figured if they use that, they immediately have some cachet.
They basically were like, the Quakers got this like
image.
They've got this reputation of being solid, badass, blah, blah. So we're going to steal it.
Welcome to the show. I am your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined by my brother, Brent Call. How are you, Brent?
I'm well. Thank you.
Right on. And we are getting right back into the story of Daniel Boone. We're deep into his life. We're reading from the book Boone, a biography written by Robert Morgan. The last episode we did, Boone was in the middle of halfway building a fort that was going to be called Fort Boone, but instead they named the place Boonesboro, and I don't know what they called the fort actually. Boone, I don't know, but they're supposed
get built.
Well, they're supposed to be building the fort. It's 1775, and a bunch of settlers went through a trail that Boone hacked through the wilderness, through the Appalachian Mountains, through a gap in the mountains called Cumberland Gap, hacked a trail through it, and a bunch of people left from North Carolina and Virginians and Pennsylvania and settlers, and they all gathered together and they went through the gap with Boone and they moved into Kentucky. And they are attempting to settle the big meadow in Kentucky, the Ohio Valley area. And so here he is. He's chopping his way through. They got in there. They're dealing with Indians who want to kill him. Ironically, the whole crew wants to put in crops, and they're not very worried about the Indians. Now remember, Richard Henderson is the politician behind the whole thing. He's the backer. He's the one with the connections. He's the one that, quote unquote, bought the land from the Cherokees. But really, it's just sort of a sham, some sort of pretense to say he bought it and owns it. He's hoping he can just move in with settlers, create a whole new town that basically it's his fiefdom. He's king over, and he can sort of, now, he doesn't, in fairness, he is trying to establish just a new colony, but he's trying to enrich himself, but also the people there. Remember, he's like, let's get under the big elm, the divine elm, with the 100-foot gigantic elm that has 100 feet of shade it casts for everyone to get under. And remember, they sat there and they tried to make laws, some game laws. Hey, you can only shoot so many of this and that, and some, what was it, horse improvement breeding practices, and those were Boone's contributions. There was other ones. They have a sergeant of arms to, there's basically a sheriff to throw people in jail or whatever they have going for the community. And they start to establish, okay, here's some rules by which we will live by in this new town called Boonesboro. And that goes on for a little bit. They're really not watching their back much, and they're under threat of getting killed by Indians. In 1778...
Have you seen this picture of Henderson?
No.
This
right?
is who keeps popping into my mind every time you see him.
You know, I think that's interesting. Brent just pulled up a picture for those that are listening of the bad guy
from Pocahontas. Governor Ratcliffe.
Yeah, it's totally like that.
That's what did they?
It's
okay,
totally
thank you.
Like that in a way, because he's pompous, but he's also, I think, unfairly vilified and looked down upon. I don't think he was as nefarious as history wants to write him out to be, but I wasn't there. I'm just reading Robert Morgan, and Robert Morgan seems to be a historian who tries to keep it 100. And to me, what I'm seeing is he's giving him a fair shake, and he's like, yeah, well, wouldn't you if you were investing money and trying to build a colony and a city? And he teams up with Boone, so he obviously knows he needs someone like Boone. He values Boone's abilities, but he also recognizes that he needs Daniel Boone, and Daniel Boone is a genius for what he needs, and he recognizes Boone's prowess in the wilderness and so on. So he is not without understanding where his weaknesses are and other people's strengths. He greases all the right palms. He has pulled all the right strings except for one. He did not extend ownership of the Transylvania Company, which is his company, to Patrick Henry or Thomas Jefferson, both of which are powerfully influential individuals that are in government, and he cut them out, even though he let kind of everyone else in, which proves to be a big mistake and probably the main cause of his downfall. One of many, I suppose. So Patrick Henry, who's governor of Virginia, and who also arguably is basically the main instigator of the Revolutionary War. He's give me liberty or
Give me death.
give me death.
You gotta love that.
He ends up being part of Harrodsburg, I believe, which is sort of this like a mirror copy of the Transylvania Company's Boonesboro, right? So he just ends up forming his own sort of group who then was moving in and settling. Now, they're both making claims of owning huge parts of Kentucky, right? Under the name of the company. So these guys move in, they buy up all the land, right? They have a few settlers that get a little piece here and there, like Boone was getting 2,000 acres, right? And little people get their little spots, but Transylvania Company, Richard Henderson, and then the people he greased the palms, they get the huge cuts of land, right? Same over at Harrodsburg. They're doing the same thing. Now, they're arguing about legitimacy, let's say, the legitimacy of these claims. You know, can the Transylvania Company really say they bought the land and own it and so forth? And there's a lot of speculation saying, no, he's a fake, he's a fraud, he pretended to buy the land from the Cherokees, he doesn't have a claim on it. The Shawnees own this land more than the Cherokees ever did, right? So he has to run back to Virginia, and he has to write some petitions and put out some fires and try to keep pushing the legitimacy of his venture. Meantime, he's running up against Patrick Henry. Later, he tries to offer Patrick Henry some cut because it gets to be bad, and he basically throws him out of his office or just says, sorry, dude, too late now. I don't need you.
Could you imagine snubbing the guys that give me liberty or to give me death, or the guy who discovered electricity?
Or becomes, well, Thomas Jefferson becomes the president of the United States. I mean, you're sitting here, you're dealing with some
powerhouses.
Yeah. So he ends up, what does he do? He creates a petition and he sends it to the crown and the British Empire. And he says, hey, King, you're going to love this place we're building. Sanction it. Meantime, he does the same thing for the colonial government too, the local, because the Revolutionary War, this is 1775. The Revolutionary War just kicked off.
We're dumping tea.
And it's rolling into 1776, and Henderson's a smart man. He doesn't know who's going to win. And he's just trying to build a fiefdom over here in a little town and build wealth and a future and a legacy and all this kind of stuff. So he's moving over there, and he doesn't want to lose it all, so he doesn't know who's going to get it. Is it going to be the king and the British Empire going to maintain control, or is it the new sheriffs in town that take over? And so he kind of plays a petition to both sides. The language in the petition is so broad, it supports both groups, whoever becomes. You could read it either way, right?
That takes a special talent to write.
It does.
It really does.
And I would say that Henderson's not an evil man, He is an ambitious man, a genius, a brilliant guy. I mean, think of all the strings he's pulled so far. I mean, he used a contract for Indians in India as his pretense for negotiating with the Indians the Cherokee Indians for the purchase of the land. I mean, he got the paperwork in order and enough to sort of make it seem like everything's official until the point where he can just sort of, it's too late now. Just give it. He's sitting on it. How are you going to get him off of it?
Yep.
So in the midst of all of this, turns out this is a foreshadowing. It's a spoiler of what's going to happen down the road. In 1778, he's denied the land. He doesn't get it. The whole thing, Boonesboro caves in. Okay. And he ends up suing for years and years until they grant him 400,000 acres.
Who did he sue?
He sued, it had to be, at that point, I believe, the United States of America, the new...
Gotcha.
Because England loses at some point, yeah, and America wins its independence, and at that point, I believe, he goes through the courts and he's saying, hey, I put a lot of work into this, risked my life, we got Kentucky started, I built Boonesboro, what it is. I did all this stuff. I blood, sweat, tears. People died. You can't just screw me like this. And the government's saying, sorry, you don't get to own all that stuff. But they do say you as an individual, in the end, after petitions and suing and all this kind of stuff, he does get 400,000 acres for just himself. But he doesn't own this giant thing that he can then sell to new settlers moving in, right? He gets granted his piece. Now, Boone was part of the Transylvania Company's. He was awarded 2,000 acres for just cutting Boone's trace and getting back there.
But it was technically part of the company, though, right?
It was, because he lost it when Transylvania Company moved in, when they were denied their claims.
Bummer.
So Boone, though, gets land over and over again, and this is a telling insight into Boone's personality. He gets land over and over and over, and he just loses it over and over again. And a lot of land. He should be rich in land. But every single time it seemed that he got his land and someone disputed it, he made no effort to keep it. Some people can look at that and say, well, Boone just lived in the now. He all he cared about was getting out to go hunting, it seemed, or to go out and do another adventure, or to go somewhere else. I don't think that's a fair look at it, though, because I think when you look at Boone and you consider, they would say the same thing about Native American Indians. They're lazy. They don't care about the future. They just live in the now. I think that's wrong. I think that the things that Boone cared about, money could not buy. And it just so happened that other people valued things that money was required to have, right? Boone valued experience. He valued adventure. Remember how he despised farming pretty much?
His whole life
growing up as a kid, he was always out hunter-gathering, doing the other stuff while everybody was milking cows and cutting fields and planting crops. He didn't want to build an estate and and just stay. He wanted to go do things, have adventures, run from Indians. You know what I mean? And a man like that, just the whole idea of owning a big piece of land isn't that alluring when he could just strike out into the next frontier and see something new. Like, you can't buy that. Like, no. It just takes you to do it. Risk it. Run for it. Mm-hmm. Live off the land. Like, outmaneuver the enemy, or at least your antagonist. Is that the word?
Protagonist?
No.
Antagonist.
I think so.
Pro's good, and's bad.
And so I think what you're dealing with is, a man who just didn't value material things because he valued experiences and adventures.
I see a lot of trashy content out there nowadays where people walk up to people with money or something, or they ask the question to random strangers on the streets, would you cheat on your spouse for $1 million, or would you do X, Y, and Z for money, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And I see those things, and it's always a no for me. It's a hard no. Right. I would not cheat on my person for any amount of money, because I'm with Boone on that. Like, money does not necessarily get me the things that I want.
Well, I often think, I see guys because I do a lot of hunting and adventures myself. And a lot of my favorite adventures, like Spring Bear, those are in my backyard. Those cost me almost nothing. Dollar-wise, trip-wise, gasoline, give me a mountains, a few hours drive from my house, and a backpack and some freeze-dried meals, some of it homemade and most of it, and just let me go back for 15 days, 16 days and see things that no one else has seen, go places that no one else can go or does go, and look at, find a giant bear, take him, skin him, eat him on the mountain, just live out there. And that isn't an expensive thing. It doesn't cost a whole bunch of money. And some people say, well, I wish I had all that money. It doesn't take much money. Mm-hmm. And I see that from guys that are driving $50,000 Dodge
toy
Cummins pickups and they're pulling toy haulers behind them and they have like 3 UTVs and you're like,
there's several hunting trips right there.
Yeah, like
priorities.
My whole kit, a few $1,000s and you're dialed. You have it all for life. Like you have your sleeping bag, your sleeping pad, your tent, a few things, and you're pretty dialed, right? It's a very relatively inexpensive endeavor, and Boone, I think, lived on those terms. He didn't need much. A little bit for the horse, a little bit for the traps, a little bit of food and supplies, and go off and do his thing and come back. And it wasn't that he needed estates and lands and all of that to do the things he valued. Does that make sense?
Yeah, to me.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah. He was often called a white Indian, because he seemed to value the lifestyle that the Indians had, which, again, think about it. Minimal. Teepees, small shelters, nomadic life, living off the land, soaking up nature. In a way, living a much more, I would say, evolutionary lifestyle, one that we are actually evolved to live than maybe modern day life, which is not natural on so many levels. So anyway, Boone goes back to Boonesboro. And he brings his wife. Remember, she was kind of not well. She gave birth and the baby died, and she had to get strong. She's strong now. They move back to Boonesboro. So now they're in Boonesboro. And
didn't they have to wait like several months for her?
Yeah.
And Boone's trying to get everyone to go, and
no one would leave.
Not without you.
Yeah. He gathered all sorts of people to come with him back to Kentucky, people who he's like convinced to come there and settle in this new land. And they would not go until he was ready to go. And so now he's rushing out there, and they all know that the more people, the safer it gets. The more settlers that make that move, the more likely they're not going to be overrun or killed by Indians. Okay. But right now there's all sorts of settlers fleeing Kentucky because Indians, and they've been getting killed and kidnapped. Some boys got murdered and, playing in a creek, and different people are killed in the woods. Some people did go out and never come back again. And so people are like, I'm out. This is too hostile. The Indians are everywhere. This is too wild of a country. I'm going back to the Yadkin Valley. I'm going back to North Carolina, Virginia. But then there are people who are also on their way in going, I'm in. I'm going, whatever it takes. And then you have the people who got crops in who didn't leave and are now a year into the Boonesboro settlement, and they are like, we're in, we are settled, we've got it figured out, we're here for the long haul. Okay, so I think that gets us all caught up to speed, gives you some background without me having to read. I'd recommend you buy the book if you haven't. It's a great book, national bestseller, Boone, a biography by Robert Morgan. It helps the author, who we're getting a lot of this information from. He put a lot of work into it, so if you can support the author, that's great too. But we're going to jump ahead now into one of the stories that make Boone the most famous. Okay? Back to the book. It says, on July 14, 1776, one of the legendary events in Boone's long career occurred. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon at Boonesboro. There were no church services at the settlement, but early that day, someone had read from the scriptures to an assembled group. And when the customary Bible reading was over, Boone had lain down in his cabin to rest. Jemima Boone, who was 14, had stabbed her foot on a stub of cut cane and wanted to go out on the river in a dugout canoe to soothe her sore foot in the cool water. As a young girl, Jemima had enjoyed playing in the water so much she had been given the nickname Duck. Elizabeth and Frances Calloway, daughters of Richard Calloway, 16 and 14 years old, respectively, agreed to accompany her. Remember who Richard Calloway is? The guy I can't stand.
It's funny because every time you say that, I think of this Scooby-Doo cartoon where there was this boys' school, and they always go, all the way with Calloway. And so that every time you say Calloway, in my mind, I'm chanting.
Your pop culture references are hilarious.
Awful, man.
So, Richard Calloway is just kind of this, man, he is, Richard. I believe it's Richard. It's the Calloway. He's a curmudgeon, man.
Richard Calloway?
Mm-hmm.
So he's a dick?
Yeah, right. So, anyway, it looks like Elizabeth and Frances Calloway, daughters of Richard Calloway, 16 and 14 years old, respectively, agreed to accompany her. Nathan Reed had volunteered to paddle the canoe for them, but had backed out. It was a beautiful afternoon, and the girls glided out onto the stream. Betsy and Fanny paddled by turns, while Jemima hung her hurt foot in the water. They drifted several hundred yards downstream, floating and paddling carelessly. One of the Calloway girls suggested they stop on the north bank near some cliffs and gather flowers and young cane. But Jemima warned them that they should stay away from the Indian shore, as it was against their father's orders to go on that shore at any time. Proposer observed that perhaps she was more afraid of the yellow boys than she was of disobeying her father.
Wow.
That's just an excuse because you're afraid of the Indians.
Yes.
And,
100%. I'm sensible.
She was teasing, unaware that 5 Indians were indeed watching them from the brush on the north bank. The strong current pushed the canoe closer to that bank than they had intended to go. Sure. Girls are so dumb. Young. Suddenly, 5 Indians plunged out of the cane and waded into the water to grab the line attached to the front of the dugout. As they tried to drag the canoe to the shore, Fanny Calloway beat him over the head with the paddle until it broke.
Good job.
Betsy
Fanny.
joined her in hitting the brave, and the other Indians waded in and threatened to overturn the canoe unless the girls got out. Once the girls were led ashore, the canoe was pushed back into stream so they couldn't use it to escape. The 3 girls began screaming, hoping to be heard at Boonesboro, a quarter of a mile upstream on the other side of the river. One of the Indians grabbed Betsy Calloway by the hair and indicated he would scalp her if the girls did not shut up. The girls were pulled and pushed up the steep bank above the river, but at the top, Jemima refused to go farther, pointing to her wounded foot, saying it was too painful to walk on. But the Indians waved their knives and tomahawks, threatening to kill her right there if she didn't go on. The Indians produced moccasins for Jemima and for Fanny Calloway, who was also barefoot. Then they cut off the bottoms of the girls' dresses and petticoats so they could move faster through the brush. The girls wrapped the strips of cloth around their legs to protect them from briars and limbs. The Indians prodded them along, making their way on the tops of ridges where the ground cover was thinner.
They're so proficient. It's like they've done this before.
The lowlands along the streams were dense with cane and vines and thickets of cedar. Daniel Bryan would later say the Indians chose ground where they would make the least trail. Sometimes the girls would mash down a weed, the Indians would straighten it up or turn it the other way.
Dang.
The Indian party was made up of 3 Shawnees and 2 Cherokees. One of the Cherokees was a chief named Hanging Maw, whom Jemima had seen before, probably when the Boones were living on the Clinch. He spoke better English than the others, and Jemima told him who she was, hoping that he would remember that Boone had been friendly to him. He asked if the others were her sisters, and she answered that they were all children of Daniel Boone. Hanging Maw laughed and said, "We have done pretty well for old Boone this time."
Dang.
The 5 Indians were part of a larger group returning to Ohio from a conference at the Cherokee town of Chota. Called together in May by dragging canoe, the large gathering that included many Creeks and Shawnees as well as Cherokees angrily denounced the white settlement of Kentucky and lands over the mountains. Encouraged by British support, the young chiefs and warriors planned a concerted campaign against the American forts and stations. While his father, Atukaluka, I listened to what was it? I can't say. I can't. I just
You just listened to it?
I just listened to it to figure out tukulakula. Yeah,
Tukulakula?
this is terrible. A takalakala.
A takalakala?
Yeah, a takalakala. A takalakala. Yeah, that's how it goes. A takalakala.
Boom, shakalaka.
Yeah, a takalakala. A takalakala.
That's a tongue twister.
While his father, a takalakala, and
Say that
other
5 times
and
fast.
older and the other older chiefs remained silent in humiliation, ignored. Dragon Canoe roused those present to kill the Long Knives. The British had already given Dragon Canoe 3,000 pounds of gunpowder to use against the Americans. So basically what's happening right now is you have the Revolutionary War. It's kicked off. And the British are saying to the Indians, hey, we're going to pay you to go and kill as many settlers as we can. We want to make, you go out and you do it and we'll give you a reward. I think they get into the reward a little bit later.
Dang, that's savage.
It's real savage. In fact, in the end, it ends up like whatever settlers were kind of,
On the fence
on which side to join. When they recruited the Indians and gave them like a high bounty for every colonial scalp they would get, boom, done.
Because there's no way that they're going to be able to differentiate between the people that are siding with the English and not. Like, they're just scalping white folks.
Yeah,
for
pretty
money.
much. And at that point, they were like, yeah, the British Empire can go to hell.
What I love is that they don't have a problem with, like, hunting animals for furs and stuff, but they'll hunt down the settlers for scalps, for cash.
It says that
That's hardcore.
that afternoon, the kidnappers and their prey traveled about 6 miles and camped near where Winchester, Kentucky is now. The girls were tied with buffalo tugs. Know what those are?
Tugs? T-U-G?
Buffalo tugs. So they could not reach each other, each bound to a tree and also to a brave. So they were tied to a tree, and then they were tied to a brave. So not only were they they were tied like to a tree, and then to each of them were tied to a certain Indian.
It's the name of a dog toy now, Buffalo Tugs. So it's not really pulling them. Buffalo Tug settlers.
All night the girls sat with their backs to the trees they were tied to. So they're tied to the trees, and then in addition to that, they're tied to an Indian.
Man, those Indians, man, they know how, like, you're not running away, Boone. You're going to sleep between us. Okay?
It says they weren't able to sleep, and Jemima happened to have a penknife in her pocket, but her hands were bound so tightly she couldn't reach it. The kidnapping was almost certainly not something planned by Hanging Maw and the 4 others. It must have been a spur-of-the-moment temptation once they spotted the girls so far from Boonesboro. Taking prisoners or hostages lent prestige to the kidnapper, and capturing the daughters of Daniel Boone would bring even more honor. Kidnapping was understood by the Shawnees in a different way than with the whites. Their population depleted by disease and war, the villages needed additional members. Their birth rates were low. Women and children and even men could be adopted into the tribe. And after the correct rituals were performed and new names given to them, the adopted became members of the nation.
I wonder if that was a common practice before a large portion of the population was wiped out by diseases.
Yeah, so they said by 1650 or 1670 or something like that.
Like 86%.
86% of
The native
population had disappeared due to disease.
Do you think they were doing that stuff before that, though?
I think that, from what I can understand, probably not at that scale, right? I mean, think about it. 86% of the population is gone. At that point, you need more villagers. You need more people. You need more. It takes a village to keep the whole thing safe and alive. You need a little militia. You need hunters. You need people working, to build shelters and weapons and all that kind of stuff. So, you could see how the lack of humans, the lack of people, the population decline could result in kidnapping and adopting. Nevertheless, by this time, you're 150 years from the wipeout of their civilization. It could just be ingrained in their culture at this point. But whether it was there before or not, it's hard to say. I mean, it's a great question.
I'm going to have to dig into that. It's going to bug me.
I would say, though, that at this point, it's true. The way that the Indians did this, if they thought you had value, they didn't kill you. They tried to keep you. And they wanted you to be, and this is what's ironic too, is so often when they did kidnap white folks and bring them into the village, those people ended up becoming like not wanting to return to the white civilization, which speaks tremendously to the lifestyle that the Indians were living, the fulfillment in it. Something about it was I wonder,
peace.
Something's different. It's kind of an indictment on civilization in a sense, right? Now, there were the few, I'd say 20% or something from what I've read, did want to return and didn't like the Indian lifestyle. But who knows what the special, but the great majority valued Indians, loved Indians, and wanted to remain with Indians once they had, been adopted. Still, I mean, they often killed. If they didn't think you had what it took to be adopted, they just tomahawked you, on the way home. Like, you don't be a pain in the ass. Don't go too far. It helps probably to be pretty.
Damn it.
I mean,
what if you don't got hair?
It says the birth rates were low. Women and children, even men, could be adopted into the tribe. And after the correct rituals were performed, the new names given, boom, they became members. The kidnapping of children was not unlike the program the Nazis later practiced called Lebensborn, where children in the conquered countries were taken back to the fatherland to become future citizens. To Hanging Ma, I'm sure they had to be white with blue eyes. Blonde hair. To Hanging Ma and the others, Jemima and her supposed sisters must have looked like good candidates for adoption. At the very least, they could be held for ransom or sold to the British. The next morning, the Indians resumed the march toward the Ohio. As they stumbled along, the girls broke twigs to guide those that might follow to rescue. When the Indians noticed this, the captives explained they were so tired and weak they had to grab limbs to keep from falling over. Some accounts claim Betsy Calloway began tearing pieces from her linen handkerchief and dropping them as clues behind her.
I bet that didn't get her switching.
The Indians caught her, leaving signs, and again threatened her with their tomahawks. But the girls continued to break twigs and tear off leaves to mark the trail and blistered their hands with the effort. Betsy Calloway had shoes with wooden heels that made deep cracks in the ground by streams and through buffalo wallows. Noticing the tracks she made, the Indians knocked the heels off her shoes, but she still took care to make discernible tracks. These girls are a pain in the
no, for real, dude. Like, not worth it. Like, if there was not only that, but like a bunch of white chicks are not the ethnicity that I would be going to try to kidnap. Oh,
these girls are resourceful and determined. They know they got to survive, right?
Oh,
and they got to know, like, okay, they know Hanging Ma. Jemima's seen him. He's hung out with Boone. They know each other, right? So there is a degree of familiarity, and they know Indian lifestyle because they grow up around Indians and with Indians who come in and out of settlements.
Jemima grew up in America around Indians.
Yeah, and so they also know that they're just going to be probably adopted, and because of her name, though, being a Boone, she's ensured a little bit more safety than if she was just some random person, right? She definitely connected. So there's chances for the British Empire to negotiate for them, ransom, or Boone himself, So there's all sorts of possibilities at play, but the girls got to know at some point they're going to get, married off, or, they're not going to get to choose their future.
No, it's not going to, yeah.
It says, and maybe 10 years from now, a girl that had that experience might be okay with it down the road. But right now, they're like, hell no.
They just broke her shoes. She's pissed.
It says,
they tore up their dresses.
Yeah, it says, using the excuse of her sore foot, Jemima fell down again and again, delaying the progress of the party. When she fell down, she would scream out, hoping that anyone following her would hear. She was sure Boone and other men were on their way to rescue them. She made as much noise and trouble as she could, and the captors continued to threaten, but never actually struck her. That morning, they came across an old pony grazing in a meadow, and the Indians caught it as a mount for the injured Jemima.
Nice.
In fact, all three of the girls took turns riding the pony, but they pretended they had never ridden before and kept falling off and irritating the pony to make it unruly. The annoyed pony bit Betsy Calloway on the arm. The horse was cross and would bite, Nathan later told Draper. The Indians laughed at the girls' clumsiness and then grew impatient. One of the Indians mounted the horse himself to demonstrate how to ride, but the lesson had little effect. The girls who were actually experienced riders continued to tumble off into the brush by the trail until the Indians turned the pony loose and made their captives walk. They're putting on quite the show.
They are. Good for them. Good for them.
Dude, sometimes men are just, especially young men, girls are so conniving. They're so much better at manipulation and trickery. Men just use brute strength to get things they want. Mm-hmm. Women have to use negotiation, subtlety and manipulation. You know, It says they finally got rid of the pony. They're like, screw this. You girls can walk. The Indians offered the girls buffalo tongue to eat, but the fare was tough and unsalted and pretty much inedible. The Indians sometimes referred to the prisoners as pretty squaws and showed them they did not want to hurt them. Though they threatened the girls with tomahawks and knives, Hanging Maw and the others were surprisingly gentle with their captives. They were tolerant, even indulgent by the standards of the wilderness. The girls were allowed to fix their hair and look for lice. Hanging Maw fondled Jemima's hair and took out the combs himself, admiring the length and brightness. In one version of the story, Hanging Maw asked Jemima to dress his hair and look for lice, and she agreed. Many years later, a niece told Jemima she would never have done such a thing herself. And Jemima said, "Oh, yes, 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 you would," she said, "for the Indians were really kind to us." By the end of the second day, the Indians became talkative. They said they were on their way to the Shawnee towns north of the Ohio. They told the girls the Cherokees would attack the Watauga settlement, and a party of Cherokees were on their way to attack the Kentucky settlements as well. They teased the Indian whom Fanny Calloway had beaten with the paddle. That night, they camped a few miles south of the Licking River, and the girls were again tied up so tightly they couldn't sleep. Betsy Calloway, who was older, she's 16, tried to cheer up the other two. The next morning, the Indians seemed more confident that they had outrun any pursuers. After the party crossed Hingston Creek, the captors felt safe enough to shoot a buffalo and cut off part of the hump for lunch. They were all hungry, and the girls had had nothing to eat for 2 days. They stopped in a little clearing in the woods to cook the tender hump and rest.
They didn't eat for 2 days? Why? Didn't they have
on the run, man?
I thought they had like buffalo
They offered
tongue.
her tongue. They offered them tongue.
I would say they had food.
They didn't want it.
Were they the only ones not eating?
It was inedible.
It was icky.
It
Good.
says,
Good. Don't eat. Don't eat, dang it.
when the girls' screams were heard at Boonesboro, Boone leapt from the bed where he had been napping and grabbed his rifle. He ran to the river without even thinking to put on his moccasins. So he ran out there without shoes on. People were dashing around, sounding the alarm and grabbing weapons for pursuit. The problem was the screams were coming from the other side of the river. The dugout was gone. Boone spotted the craft far downstream, but it was out of reach. Samuel Henderson, who was engaged to Betsy Calloway, was shaving but dropped his razor and ran for his rifle. Richard Calloway, father of the two girls, was flustered, but Boone was calm and organized. He told young John Gass to swim after the canoe, and when the dugout was brought back, Boone and 5 others crossed to the north bank as Calloway, Nathaniel Hart, David Hart, David Gass, Flanders Calloway, and others on horses dashed to a ford a mile down the river to cross. So as many guys as could get in the dugout after the young chap swam after it and got it, jumped in the boat, and the rest of them got on horses and shot downstream on horseback to cross the river where the horses could cross, where it was a shallow ford. It was about a mile down the river, so they had to ride a mile down, cross, and then mile back. Boone directed some to look upriver for the trail and some to look downriver until the tracks were found. So they're looking for the girls' tracks. Then he persuaded Richard Calloway and the party on horses to ride directly to the Blue Licks, where he knew the Indians would cross on their way to the Ohio, where they could intercept the kidnappers. Meanwhile, he and the others on foot would track the Indians. Yeah, your daughter's been taken, Brent. Talk about the rage.
I don't like.
Talk about the rage.
I know, dude.
Rage.
I know. Like, I'm trying to sit here, like, but I'm like sweating right now underneath this. Like,
dude, I mean, just the, it sounds like Boone is fairly compartmentalized here, where he's like, because Calloway's emotional. He's an emotional. He's the guy I can't stand. He's brave and bold and dangerous, but he's just a whiner and an emotional, egotistical, brash person. But anyway, Boone's like, we have a job to do, and I'll worry about, mourning the loss of my daughter later if I have to, but I'm not going to do that until we get there, And there's got to be some emotional, and he's got to be tamping down the anger and the rage and putting it someplace else, because there's no way as a father you're not feeling this. And talk about like the desire to hunt these guys down. You took my daughter. Oh my gosh. Like it's
they can't have a swift death. That's just that wouldn't work for me.
Well, I mean, in some sense though, you're hearing the story unfold and you hear, the girls talk about how nice the Indians were. Mm-hmm. It's not it's not like, true, but, something to keep in the back of your mind is, what are the motives here? What are the hearts of these men who took the girls? Again, there's a cultural difference in kidnapping and so forth. Not that they wouldn't.
It's a practicality thing. I mean, if you snatch a girl and you take her 3 weeks out into the woods and now she's amongst your people, that's a barrier she can't break. Like, assimilation is just going to end up happening as a matter of course.
Well, remember about Mary Ingalls? Was it Mary Ingalls or Mary Ainsley or whatever?
Ingalls is the last name. I can't remember if it was Mary.
Yeah, she ran. She 41 days. She made her way back to civilization, escaping the Indians.
And I am sure
they have a statue. Remember?
She's holding her skirt. Like, it's the weirdest thing. I don't understand that statue. I need to dig into that.
So anyway, so back to the book. It says Boone directed some to look upriver. Okay. Meanwhile, he and the others would go on foot. Mm-hmm. It is likely that Boone used this argument to get rid of the hot-tempered and rash Calloway.
Smart.
Leaving himself and a few others, including John Floyd, to proceed with the necessary stealth. Good. Remember who John Floyd is? Mm-hmm. He is the young, up-and-coming gentleman employed, I think, by George Washington at some point, somewhat of a military lieutenant fellow who's reliable, resourceful, just a kind of a stud. And
he was out there on the hunt with John Stewart and stuff before John Stewart went missing.
No, he was the guy that was part of the surveying party that Boone went and rescued that came back in three separate groups.
That's right.
Okay.
So Floyd's mixed up.
Back to the book, it says, but Calloway and his party riding to the Blue Licks also provided a kind of insurance. So he wanted to get rid of them, but also there is some reality to it, some practicality to sending him to just head him off, right? If all else failed, they might intercept the kidnappers there. Covering about 5 miles before dark, Boone and several others heard a barking dog. Following the noise, they came upon a group of men building a cabin deep in the forest. There they camped for the night. When the alarm had been given, the men of Boonesboro had been dressed in their Sunday best, which meant cloth pantoons instead of breechclouts and deerskin leggings. Young John Gass, he's the guy that Joe dove in and got the canoe, wasn't he? Was he? Engaged Betsy. Yeah, young. Everything comes back to young John Gass. He's so young. They're like, hey, we're all old. Like, do the swim for the canoe. Okay. Yeah. Now, they tell him, go back and grab all our gear because they just got hot on the chase. And so they don't have the gear that they want. So yeah, back to the book. It says that, but Calloway, party riding at Boone. Okay, so it says, following the noise, they came upon a group of men. So they spend the night there. It says, young John Gass volunteered to return to Boonesboro during the night and get ammunition, supplies, and proper clothes for the pursuers. He found his way through the dark woods, reaching the settlement, and returned to the camp before dawn with provisions and clothes. That means he went 5 miles back, grabbed the stuff, and 5 miles back in again. So he's 10 miles of calories burned or more. To get everything so he covered 10 miles round trip in the night so that by daylight, you can't track in the dark. They don't have headlamps Plus, it's just too hard. And it's dangerous. Right?
Yeah. What's your source of light?
Yeah.
A torch.
And if they all went back and got supplies and came back, that'd be stupid, but they need the right stuff, weapons, whatever. So he goes back and he gets everything. And so it says, he found his way through the dark, blah, 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 returned to the camp before dawn with provisions, clothes, and Boone's moccasins. Boone kind of needed some shoes. He did all this barefoot in 5 miles.
I love that.
Yeah. Clearly he was already an experienced woodsman and a brave one. Is
it John Gass?
John Gass. Yeah.
See, in my mind, I keep saying Kyle Gass.
I don't know why.
Because that's one half of Tenacious D.
All right. So it says young John Gass volunteered. So anyway, as soon as there was light enough to follow the trail, Boone and the others set out. 3 of the cabin builders joined them after they had found where the Indians camped the night before. They lost the trail in a cane break. The Indians had split up there and taken unlikely detours, making it difficult to decide which trail to follow. Here, Boone made a critical decision. Instead of following the trail, they would head in the direction they knew the party would take.
So they're not going to follow them, they're trying to cut them off?
They would head in the direction they knew the party would take. That way, they could move faster and perhaps be less vulnerable to an ambush. You got to know the land, dude. You got to know the land to go, okay, they went into the cane break. We could actually pick apart their trail, or we could cut around, get ahead, and then cut across their trail a second time. To find a trail like that, you got to be one hell of a woodsman. For real.
I'm not doing it.
You got to know the trails, and you got to know how to pick up a trail in the woods that's made by a bunch of girls.
Bro, I have a hard time getting to a place with a GPS.
That's kind of scary, too. You're leaving a trail behind that you're on, and you know is theirs.
And it's not like these trails last forever. They have a timestamp on them. A couple hours, day or two later, that's a cold trail.
They struck out in a straight course, moving as fast as they could, crossing and recrossing the trail. They saw the bits of cloth, broken twigs, and Betsy's tracks, signs the girls were still alive. When it got dark, they stopped to rest by a small stream and resumed the pursuit at daybreak. At Hinkston Creek, they came on fresh tracks, and Boone knew they were closing in. Since the Indians were now moving with less caution, he also knew it was time to start tracking them directly. The Indians would follow the great warrior's path for a while, then slip off onto a buffalo trace and then another trace to confuse those pursuing. Boone followed every shift and feint. When they came upon the dead buffalo with its hump cut off, he told his companions the Indians would stop to cook their meal just ahead at the next stream. They saw a snake the Indians had killed and left flopping. They crossed a small stream that the Indians had waited for a few 100 yards to throw them off.
Why'd you close it?
So they crossed a stream, and they waded up that stream 100 yards, 300 yards, and then, so they got into the stream, walked up it 300 yards, and then across to throw off anyone pursuing them to try to find their trail. They had to think they were doing pretty good, these Indians, but they were getting tracked by Daniel Boone. Using great caution, Boone and the others spread out, knowing the Indians would be stopped just ahead. If the kidnappers were not taken by surprise and killed, they would tomahawk the captives to death at the first sign of the rescuers.
So this has become a stealth mission.
Within 200 or 300 yards, they spotted the fire where the Indians were cooking the buffalo hump. One of the Indians was posted as a sentry, but he had laid down his rifle to light his pipe and pick up materials for mending his moccasins. Another Indian had lain down to rest, and one was getting wood while another was preparing the meat. Hanging Ma had gone to the branch for some fresh water. Boone and the others crawled through the underbrush to get closer. One in particular, Big Injun, called Big Jimmy, was spitting up meat on the side opposite to them. Fanny looked at him to see how he fixed his meat. So this is a quote. Okay, this is why I'm having trouble reading it.
Okay, I was like, so those words sound funky.
It says, it's quote, one in particular, Big Indian, called Big Jimmy, was spitting up meat on the side opposite to them. Fanny looked at him to see how he fixed his meat. She saw the blood burst out of his breast before she heard the gun.
Ooh.
The girls were sitting on a log away from the fire when William Smith fired prematurely and missed. Then John Floyd fired, wounding the sentinel. John Floyd, good man. At the crack of the guns, the girls jumped up. Jemima shouted, "That's Daddy," and started toward the rescuers. She's 14. Father yelled to them to throw themselves flat upon the ground in case the Indians might shoot back. Nathan told Draper. The girls dropped to the ground, but in the excitement, they stood again, and one rescuer, mistaking them in their ragged clothes for Indians, started to club Betsy, who wore a red bandana on her head. Boone grabbed his arm and shouted, "For God's sake, don't kill her when we have traveled so far to save her." The man, when he saw what he'd almost done, wept. In fact, there was a good deal of weeping when it was over. Nathan Reed, one of the rescuers, later said, "The exultation of the poor girls cannot be described. They embraced and thanked their rescuers. The girls were so overcome with gratitude, and the men with relief. The fleeing kidnappers were forgotten." Quote, "After the girls came to themselves enough to speak, they told us there were only 5 Indians and could all speak good English." John Floyd also described the place as covered with thick cane and, quote, "and being so much elated on recovering the 3 poor little broken-hearted girls prevented our making any further search." So they kind of got the girls and then kind of like
get out of Dodge, bro.
And kind of just forgot about everything. The girls showed the effects of the 3-day ordeal. Their clothes were torn, their faces dirty and tear-stained, eyes swollen from lack of sleep, legs scratched by limbs and briars. Boone wrapped blankets around them and embraced them. "Thank Almighty Providence," Boone said, "for we have the girls safe. Let's all sit down by them now and take a hearty cry." Everyone in the party wept with relief and joy. After they had calmed down, Boone remembered that he had shot an Indian and pointed to the place. A rifle was found and drops of blood led into the woods. 2 bodies of Shawnees were discovered, one shot by Floyd and one possibly by Boone. 2 years later, Boone would learn that one of the Shawnees killed that day was the son of the man who would become Boone's captor and adoptive father.
Wow. Bro, this is like a freaking soap opera. That is ridiculous. Does he have an evil twin that's going to pop out sometime too? You can't make this stuff up.
It's unbelievable. It's wild, huh?
Uh-huh.
Yep. And it's interesting how that story unfolds. Because obviously to become an adopted, you got to get kidnapped.
Oh, my God. That's crazy.
So there's more to this, and you get the girls kind of, hindsight and so forth, what happens here and how the rest of the story. But this is one of those stories that makes Daniel Boone famous across the frontier, right? Mm-hmm. The dude's daughter got kidnapped by Indians. 3 days later, he tracks those Indians down
for 3 days
and kills 2 out of 5 and rescues the girls. Now, it's interesting. Hanging Ma ends up being a very prominent Indian. And this is sort of a strange sort of experience that doesn't coincide with his normal behaviors and how he comports himself. Interesting man. We'll get into him a little bit too. The book kind of dives into him too.
Usquali Guta.
Is that his?
That's Hanging Ma's Indian name. I was looking up the origins for Jemima because the only person I know that's named Jemima is Aunt Jemima.
Yeah.
Do you know where it's from?
I mean,
take
syrup.
A stab. You'll probably. This has nothing to do with the syrup.
Aunt Jemima.
No, just Jemima.
Jemima. Right. Jemima.
I bet if you take a stab, you'll probably be able to figure it out.
Jemima. Is it Bible related?
It is. It is.
I mean, kind of everything is at this time.
At this point, yeah.
I mean, you're talking Daniel.
Yeah.
It's Adam. It's John,
Dan,
Matthew.
Yeah.
I mean, the apostle names are getting used over and over again.
It's later on in life when Job has his second family. It's one of his oldest daughters. Is Jemima.
Interesting.
The other one's got shafted. I think one of them name was Karen. I'm sure.
Karen used to be a fine name till recently.
It's Keren, Hapooch. So you have Jemima, Keziah, and Karen Hapooch.
I don't think that's how you say it. Maybe hapuk or something. But anyway.
My mouth don't make the right sounds.
Yeah, there we have it. That's one of those stories. We'll get into the end of that story, how they get back and all that kind of stuff on the next podcast, on the next episode. But that's it for today. I mean, what did you think, Brent?
This has been one of my favorite ones so far. It really was. I was on the edge of my seat.
I can see your legs shaking. You're sweating.
I was like, read faster, Brian. Read faster. No, I dig the girls for just their belligerence and not giving up. Because, Boone is a really good tracker and forester and probably would have been able to find them, or woodsman, and probably would have been able to find them anyways, but the girls helped. They were just being little shitheads constantly. Yeah. And then when he said, I didn't realize how young they were. 14.
14 and the oldest was 16.
I didn't realize that until you said when they shot the first Indian and she said she was 14. I was like, that puts a little bit different perspective.
14 and 16, yeah.
Those are babies.
They are just coming into womanhood. Yeah, I mean, and you know, in some ways, these Indians were nice to them, and I don't think they had not intended to hurt the girls. If they wanted to,
they would have.
Long time.
They had 3 days with them.
Yeah, and they didn't violate the girls. And you could look at it on so many different ways and so many different levels. And Boone, this is one of the only Indians Boone kills in his life.
That's right.
For all the things, for all the Indian encounters that Boone has, I mean, it's just a handful, few where he had no choice, where he killed some Indians. Otherwise, he didn't like to kill, didn't like to take life. That Quaker blood ran strong, even though he's a fighting Quaker.
Justified. That's what that is.
Yeah, and so anyway, it's interesting to, Boone, I believe, looked at people not by tribes and such, but by individuals, and he you can see it by how much he despises some people. Like in the end, he sees people like Richard Calloway, who is just a pain in his butt, is like always there. And in the end, he does finally die a miserable death.
That's good to know.
But it's way down the line.
That'll bring me some comfort.
But it did make me feel happy but it should have happened lots earlier. But anyway, I don't know. Maybe he didn't deserve that, but he is an unlikable character. But Boone did seem to appreciate Indians a lot. And and it just goes to show that in this case, how much, and he was there all in for his daughter. It didn't matter what was necessary. And John Floyd, that dude just comes through, rises to the top too. Interesting characters. I loved this story. I can only imagine, just getting hot on the trail, following it, rescuing your daughter. It had to feel incredible. The book, throughout the book, you learn that Daniel Boone was strong, stoic, like brave, but he was very passionate, kind, and like he freely cried.
What did the Indians call him in the beginning? They called him Wide Mouth because he smiled all the time.
Yeah.
Like, that's a dope ass name. Like, that's not something you give to just anybody.
Yeah. Just a friendly, likable guy. You just don't want to kill him. He's too likable.
Daniel can hang, bro. That's what I've gathered from this.
Yeah, it's interesting.
What's funny is we need to bring this up because Mom keeps talking about it. We have an ancestor who got named Daniel Boone.
Oh yeah.
What was it, in 1830? Like 10 years after he died?
Yeah, it was 1830. Boone died in 1820, I think. And so, about 10 years later.
Yeah, Daniel Boone Lane or something.
Yeah, there were a lot of Boones and Daniels back then. I mean, that name just became a legend. And rightfully so. We're getting into more of these things that made him a legend on the frontier. And we're about to get into, because remember, what's happening in Boonesboro, Brent, with the fort?
No fort?
Yeah. And what's happening with Indian hostilities?
More experiences like the girls getting kidnapped.
And what's happening with the Revolutionary War and the British?
The British want 2% of our taxes on tea, and we said no.
And the British want to hire the Indians to kill us.
Oh, that's right. Bounties, scalping.
So everything's combining to really put the lives of these Kentucky settlers in
perfect storm,
some deep water. And how is Boone going to get himself out of this one? gets better and better. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in this week for this episode. Rather, if you like the show, let us know in the comments of the YouTube video version of the show. We try to read as many of those comments as we can. If you got questions, clarifications, if we got something wrong, let us know down there. And like and subscribe to our channel. Leave us a review on our podcast. Share it with your friends. All of that helps us continue to grow and keep bringing the show to you. We thank you, and we'll catch you on the next one. Hello, friends. I hope you're enjoying our new Dueling Pistols podcast. Remember, it's only here temporarily on the Gritty channel.
Short time.
If you want to subscribe to the main show, head on over to our YouTube channel, Dueling Pistols, and subscribe over there. And anywhere that you get your podcast, you can subscribe there. Thanks for supporting us.
Yeah, we're on all platforms.
Yeah, we're out there. Find it over there. And tell a friend.
Yeah.
Tell a friend about our new show.
Tell all your friends.
Help us grow it bigger.
We're just going to turn this to an ASMR.
All right. Thanks, guys. Catch you on the next episode.